Hey, before you listen to this video, I just want to say thank you for even, clicking on it. It's a little project of mine that I've been working on for a bit, and I hope you enjoy it. And if my pacing seems off, or if I need to slow down, just tell me. But I hope you enjoy it. Omega. Long ago, humanity had reached the stars and beyond. They even harnessed the power of suns. They thought of themselves as masters of the universe. Until one day, it was all ripped away so easily by an unspeakable beast. Humanity regressed into a dark age. For 100 years, technology and cultures disappeared. But rising from that darkness, humanity had changed, some more than others. There were those who could pull at the very fabric of the universe, creating lightning or fire, and so much more. They would be called weavers. And out of these weavers, a select few could harness the entire might of this power. They would be known as Omegas. And over the ages, humanity and these weavers separated, creating alliances and feuds. One of these feuds ended with humanity and these weavers coming to blows. Eventually, though, humanity had won, with even the help of some weaver factions. It didn't matter, though, as the punishments were placed upon all weavers. One of these punishments is when the children are of age, they're given one last test to survive an inhospitable planet. And if they survive, to be placed in the service of humanity. One of these children is an Omega. A tundra cold and dark, home to rocks and holes for creatures to hide, a quiet break from the malicious weather. In one of these holes was a boy curled into a ball. Cuts and bruises dotted his body. The boy's black hair was matted with frost. I was lucky to even be breathing. Who was it that attacked me? He thought to himself. His mind was rushing with thoughts, just trying to ignore the cold. While gripping a piece of metal close, it was crude and unwieldy. We're supposed to defend ourselves with just hunks of metal? He thought, slowly fading into sleep, the world around him disappearing. He was greeted in a dream by a familiar feeling, anticipation. He stood, looking out a window at a luxurious ship, shaped like a bullet of silver, lying the name Ola on her side, as if it was proud of this name. Crowds of people were entering and leaving the station. It was lined with terminals leading to different ships, all with their own little adventure to tell. Standing next to him was his master, a large sword strapped to his hip, his hands holding an item wrapped in blue cloth. Ceremonial tattoos lit up his arms. The face of a strong man slowly faded with age. Looking towards the boy. "Are you ready, Abraham, for your final test?" he said. A mixture of excitement and fear crossed his wrinkles. "Of course, master. You've trained me well, and I can basically take on anything," Abraham said, his gaze directed at the hidden item. Could it finally be my sword after all this time? He wondered. The old man saw Abraham was infatuated with the cloth. "Here, unravel it." Handing it over to Abraham, he quickly unveiled it to see a hunk of metal. It was light blue with white swirls entrenched in its design. If it wasn't a weapon, it could easily be mistaken as a piece of art. Disappointed, he asked, "What is this?" "That is your weapon." "But you couldn't even cut butter with it." "Oh, not yet, you see. More use it has from a single user, it shall form to fit their style and personality. But we can discuss that later. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty hungry." With a smile, they left for the Ola. The dream started to fade as the cold of the tundra shook him awake. Pulling himself up, the wounds aching with every movement, Abraham tried piecing the events of last night. But all he could remember was someone attacking him in red robes. Taking his time, he opened his bag. Inside were a few supplies. 5 rations, nothing more than dried food and meat. Next to them, though, sat 1 bottle of water. Really? Just one? Well, at least my master taught me how to control water and ice, he thought to himself while drinking the water. Hoisting himself up from the hole, he placed the bottle onto the snowy ground, raising his metal, pointing towards the snow. Slowly it followed his metal's every stroke and strike. Turning it to the air, bringing it closer to the bottle, Abraham tried to turn the snow to water, like his master had taught him so many times before. but every try ended in failure, with the snow just falling to the ground. He slumped down. What did I do wrong? Is it my stance? Or maybe I'm just hurt and I can't perform what's required. In reality, though, his metal was not listening to his will, no matter how much he pushed it upon it. Instead of doing it again, he picked up the surrounding snow, pushing it into the bottle. Hopefully it'd be safe enough to drink. Abraham surveyed the surroundings. Almost everywhere was as flat as a white blanket. In the distance, mountains stretched for miles. But then he saw something. From a glance, they would blend in with the towers of elevated earth, but they were too skinny and small. Could it possibly be a forest? No. That's a city. And where there's a city, there could be supplies and shelter. He knew his next goal. Although his wounds would slow him down, he could most likely make it in a few hours, just hopefully before the cold gets too harsh. Making his way through the snowy landscape, Abraham was out in the open. You could see him for miles. If his attacker was nearby, no way he could outrun them, or fight them in his condition. The quiet snow squeaked under his feet, going up to Abraham's knees. While approaching the city, trees black and burnt entered his view. Under his feet were sheets of old metal. They stood as a grim reminder of an old war. Taking a quick rest below a burnt tree, there wasn't a single sound. Not even the wind blew. A perfect place to reminisce on past events. He thought of what his master had told him of this old place. Abraham remembered. When they were sitting comfortably inside the olla, its interior was lined with silver and gold. A tray of dessert sat next to them, where his master was enjoying the various pastries. Abraham examined the crude metal. So, when will it turn into an actual weapon? An hour of practice or a day? He asked impatiently. Well, does a storm answer Master Lightning in a day? His master responded. Well, no. Don't worry. You'll know. Trust me. Now, you should really try some of these pastries, though. I'm not hungry, but I do have a question. What is the planet we're going to? The old man moved the tray of goodies, pulling out a small device from his pocket. It projected a planet where you could see every mountain and lake, even a city from the projection. Under it, though, the name Cori shined. I remember fighting here once. Fairly cold planet. Although the people were nice, for the most part. You're going to land here. Pointing at a white-covered area surrounded by trees in a singular city. From there, you will need to get to a small town, but a few days' trip from where you are. He moved his finger past a lake of ice and a huge canyon to a tucked-away village onto the side of a mountain. Doesn't seem too bad, Abraham said. Being you, it won't. But don't be overconfident. Something can always go awry. Also, do you remember what I told you? Of course, find others and work together. Good. There will be an entire class of people your age. You have only mastered water. The powers of your peers can make you well-rounded. And it'll be a good way to understand their cultures and fighting styles. Now relax. So in a few hours, we'll be landing. Before he could reminisce any longer, Abraham was brought back to the cold reality around him, with the howl of a wolf. Looking toward the horizon, the sun on the cusp of fading, the air was getting colder. He moved fast, only an hour until they could find shelter. There was also something else. He felt as if he was being watched from every direction. Another round of howling began, this time as if they had found their prey. Vicious and rude with every howl, Abraham started to pick up the pace, getting closer and closer to the city. He could see the faintest part of a bridge as the darkness surrounded him. Vicious eyes from the dark, like flashing lights, shined upon him. Not enough time to count. I have to keep going, he thought to himself. The sound of moving snow, squashing and smashing, hurried behind him. If you were to look around, how many would there be? 1? 10? It doesn't matter. He knows he can't fight them off. Not with his metal, at least. Finally crossing the bridge, out of breath, Abraham knows he can't escape. The best thing he could do is stand his ground against the dark. On the crest of the bridge stood 6 vicious wolves. He placed his metal between himself and the beasts. For a few moments it felt as if time had stopped, both sides waiting to act. Abraham had never fought anything living. The only thing he really fought were training bots back home. Could he even bring himself to do it? Then the wolves slowly tried to surround him, backing up further and further. His heart was beating out of his chest. Eventually, though, Abraham backed into a tree. Suddenly a wolf attacked. Luckily, though, he batted it away with one swing. As if a bell had rang, they attacked in unison, battering most of them away. Abraham fatally wounded a wolf with a heavy smack from the metal. Its body slumped onto the snow, blood oozing from its head. He felt remorse for the poor thing, thinking they only attacked because they were hungry. Then he looked to himself. There were wounds across his body, enough to make his hands shake. Moving from the tree, Abraham knew he couldn't take them on without his powers. Gripping his metal, moving it to his side like a wave slashing up. The only thing that happened was the snowy ground moving by a hair. A second wave of attacks were sent his way, not being able to deter as many strikes. He fell to one knee. A wolf, eagerly rushing the weakened Abraham, he landed a strike onto its head. Another one dead. The beasts were ready to attack in unison once more, enraged at the death of another one from their pack. Abraham knew he couldn't beat them, but still he held his metal defiantly, in his trembling hands. Suddenly a figure, though, jumped between Abraham and his assailants. The figure was holding the same crude metal. Two beasts started running at the man. From his metal a blue fire shot out like spears, igniting the two wolves. Every time the figure struck, fire would illuminate the area in a beautiful blue hue. The figure moved with a furious rhythm, keeping the metal square with his shoulders. Abraham was fading as he watched the man fight. And soon Abraham drifted away. The last thing he saw was watching the last wolf cowering away with a limp, and the man running up to him. Abraham laid unconscious on the concrete floor of a dilapidated house, a roaring blue fire brightening the shelled building. He had someone else's blanket on top of him, keeping his warmth in. Opening his eyes, Abraham slowly gained his senses back. He moved his arm, feeling every bruise and bite. "I wouldn't move if I were you. You might twist your bandages," the figure said. The voice sounded posh and somewhat pretentious. Scanning the room, sitting opposite of the fire, was a boy, no older than Abraham. His hair was a dirty blonde. His eyes were as blue as the fire. "Where am I?" Abraham asked. "Oh, just some old building in an abandoned city. By the way, you're much heavier to carry than you look," he responded. "You must have been who saved me, then," Abraham said, pulling himself up, grunting with every inch. "Indeed I am. You're welcome, by the way. But don't you think these conversations should be, well, saved for the morning? Right now, you might need to get a little bit of rest. You're falling apart." The boy laid down, closing his eyes, and began to sleep. Abraham followed his actions and slowly began to fade into his dreams once again. The dream was dark and cold, the lights of the Ola leaving Abraham in the snow. The surroundings were quiet and still. Standing there, he tried to survey the area to no avail. It was so dark that he couldn't even see 5 feet in front of him. Then someone yelled from the void. They seemed to be in trouble. Abraham ran, listening in the darkness. He got to a craggy hill, holes surrounding him. "I'm here to help. Are you okay?" he shouted. "Over here," a voice shouted from a hole across the field. Running and jumping over pits, Abraham was directly over the voice. Peering into the hole, though, no one was there. Then the sound of someone running on snow directly at him. Before Abraham could react, he was assaulted by 2 weapons from each side, peppering him. Unable to withstand it, Abraham fell into the pit with a loud thump. Looking up, the last thing he remembers seeing is the tail of a red cloak. "Wakey, wakey," a voice said. Opening his eyes, Abraham was back in the dilapidated building, with sunlight shining in from the broken window, where smoke from the smoldering fire escaped. Looking up at the man who saved him, he was in a robe of blue and gold, holding 2 steaming mugs. Placing one next to Abraham, he walked to his sleeping bag, where a large backpack laid. Seems like you were having quite the dream. More like a nightmare. So, what's your name? The man asked. Abraham debated telling him. Could he be trusted? What if he knew the one in red? After a second, he responded, hoping that the man could be trusted. The name's Abraham, and you wouldn't know anyone in red robes. The boy gripped the hilt of his medal and asked, Do you? His eyes watching Abraham's every movement. Abraham, seeing how he was acting, tried to calm down the situation. I only saw them walking yesterday in the snow. He moved to the window, expecting to see the one in red. What direction? Walking away from the city. The stranger let go of his medal, calming down. Well, sorry if I frightened you. Let's just say I haven't had the best record with him. The name's Oscar. Nice to meet you. Abraham took a drink from the mug. The hot liquid had a tingling and burning sensation that inflamed his tongue. Spitting it up immediately. What is this? That is an amazing brew of blast tea. Delicacy among my people. A bit disappointed that you couldn't even enjoy it, Oscar answered. And who are your people? Oscar looked at him with surprise. Really? It isn't obvious? The name of the tea, my fighting style, the fire. Abraham looked at him with a blank expression. I'm a phoenix, a fire weaver, he said with offense. Is that what it's called? I've always called that stuff power, Abraham said, slowly getting up. You don't get out much, do you? Not thinking about it, you're not even part of my class. Who actually are you? Abraham reluctantly told him. I'm the Omega. Oscar looked at him and started to laugh. You're joking, right? I mean, I know the Omega's on this planet, but really you? Yeah, is there a problem with that? Oh, no. If anything, I thought the Omega could handle a few wolves, Oscar said, grabbing his bag. Look, it's this stupid hunk of metal every time I try to use my power. Oh, you mean weave? It doesn't matter. It's like the metal is faulty or something. Never ever has there been a time in our weapons' lives that they have been faulty, Oscar retorted. Maybe you'll just take time, Omega. Or maybe you're the faulty one. No, I don't know about you, but I don't feel like staying in an abandoned old building for the rest of the day. I've got places to be, and, well, you're welcome to tag along. Abraham knew his chances of surviving would be much better if he stayed with this wannabe prince. Abraham grabbed his stuff, pouring the tea onto the smoldering fire. As it touched the hot cinders, a pillar of fire erupted, making him jump back. Oh, blast tea can also do that, Oscar said, leaving the building. Outside were the remnants of a once great city surrounding them. You could still feel the presence of people moving throughout the city. The statue of a phoenix took center stage in front of a large marble building. The cracked streets weaved throughout the shelled city, leading them to new landmarks, like a large tower with a purple pulsating top, or a frozen-over fountain with a fish that looked as if they were stuck in time. As they traveled, the corpses of large humanoid machines littered the buildings and streets. Abraham examined one closer. Its black metal reflected onto Abraham's face. The head was square with a singular mechanical eye. Its colossal arms had rings of metal like bracelets. The legs were pitifully short, though. Abraham guessed that these machines were most likely using their large hands in combination with their legs to move around. Quite interesting, aren't they? Oscar said, walking up to Abraham. What are they? These are Weaver Hunters. Not surprising to see so many here. It was one of the last battles of the Unification Wars. Unification Wars? Really, how much do you know? Unification Wars was when weavers, such as Stormmancers, along with Water Dancers, and some Stone Singers, united with, humanity to end the Phoenix Empire, Oscar said. Oh, yeah. Master told me a few stories about that, Abraham responded. And after the war, the ESF enforced a will upon every clan of weavers. Some voluntary, others involuntary. Oscar looked as if he had reminisced on a time long past. But can't stay here for long. We need to head somewhere. Oscar continued on his way, Abraham trailing behind him. "So we're going to the pickup point?" Abraham asked. "No, actually. I'm meeting a great friend of mine, who could bend steel beams with his hands. We're supposed to meet in an old satellite array, not too far from here. Then we're heading to the pickup point." They stood in front of a tunnel that went under the mountains that surrounded the city. The tunnel had frozen cars and bots that peppered around them. At the end of the tunnel, a transparent purple shield that hummed quietly. Behind the shield, the outskirts of a satellite array sat. Oscar tried destroying the shield with his fire, pushing his metal deeper and deeper into it to no avail. But then Abraham remembered something. This shield has the same glow as the top of that tower. Telling Oscar about it, he reluctantly followed. Time had not been kind to the spire, though. It had become unstable and weak, and only a fool would dare climb its treacherous levels. "Are you positively sure that whatever is in there will be able to turn it off?" Oscar looked at Abraham. "No, it's just a hunch, but if you want, we could try climbing the mountains," dared Abraham. "You know what? I think I would rather try my luck with the tower." They entered the tower and began to climb up. The higher they got, the colder and colder the air got, to the point that even the stairs were starting to freeze. "So, Omega, how are your wounds looking?" Much better." "Not surprising, since you use every type." "What do you mean?" "Well, depending on your weave, you can use an element, but you gain inherent ability. So, like fire weavers, have higher body temperatures. Makes sense why you and I haven't frozen up here. Another one is how water weavers heal faster." Finally, though, they made their way to the top of the tower, ice covering everything, making Abraham almost slip. In the room, a man frozen in a chair, with a sword held close to his torso. "It's a weaver," Oscar said, examining the corpse. "How long has it been here?" "Who knows, but look at this." Oscar pointed to a necklace that had the crest of a phoenix, shaped out of an orange metal. "A necklace only worn by nobility. Interesting." Oscar was tempted to take the necklace for himself. Then he thought, "I don't even deserve to be disturbing this tomb, let alone taking the proud phoenix's possession. Let's let him rest." Abraham looked around the room, where he found a hatch onto the ceiling that led to the top of the spire. From that view, you could see the entire broken city. On the top of the tower, though, an old thick metal shaft, ready to snap at any moment, held a purple glowing machine, still active. "Stand back, Omega, I'll climb it," Oscar said, putting his hands onto the rod. "Are you sure? It looks like it'd fall if the wind even hit it," he cautioned. Oscar pulled himself up the cold metal. Getting closer to the top, it started to shake. Abraham got a good look at the machine in front of him. It was a black box with different wires coming from within, and a purple light humming. Hurry up, I don't know if it's going to hold much longer," Abraham warned. The rod creaked and swayed. "Don't worry, I've almost got it," Oscar said, igniting his metal, slowly cutting into the box. Suddenly, though, a loud snap echoed next to Abraham. The shaft had broke, sending Oscar and the pole off the tower. Abraham used his metal instinctively. He had to trust himself that this time it would work, and that his weave would be true. He knew there was no other way of saving him. Slashing like a wave, a small flood of ice spewed from his sword. Grabbing a hold of the tower and rod, Abraham hurried to the edge as the ice started to crack from its weight. Looking over, Oscar held onto the rod, his hands gripping white. "Hurry, grab my hand," Abraham said, reaching toward him. Oscar climbed up the ice, almost slipping, reaching Abraham's hand not a second too soon, as the ice broke away, plummeting along with the rod. An explosion of purple following. They climbed down from the top of the tower to catch their breaths. "Well, looks like we're even now." "I can't believe it. I was able to weave again." "Good thing, too. We might need it again. More importantly, let's hope this all wasn't in vain, and that shield's gone," Oscar said, making his way down the tower and back onto the street. Abraham noticed that something was off, though. Those bots that were along the streets and tunnel had disappeared without a trace. Finally, though, they made it to the end of the tunnel, where they were able to freely see a satellite dish ready to guide them. That was until the sound of mechanical stomping surrounded them on each side. Red eyes pierced the dark tunnel. Of course! It was used to power them down! Well, Abraham, we got some angry bots, and it seems like we could put your weave to good use, Oscar said, igniting his tool with blue fire illuminating the tunnel. 2 large armed bots charged them from the dark. Together, though, they took them down, one burnt to a crisp, the other's head cleaved off by a sheet of ice. A group of 4 then attacked them, almost getting overwhelmed when Abraham was knocked to the ground and held down by a bot ready to crush him. A large storm of fire, though, burnt the bot, saving him. Looks like you owe me again, Oscar said, pulling him up. I'll just have to save you from another tower, then, Abraham teased. Before they could continue, though, another wave of 6 attacked. This time, though, the bots got the best of them. One of the bots inserted Oscar's arm between its rings, slowly tightening them. Another held Abraham, ready to pulverize him. They struggled to no avail, with no chance to break away from the soulless bots. When the taste of copper entered Abraham and Oscar's mouth, suddenly, though, one of the bots exploded with lightning. Behind it stood a girl in white robes, surrounded by currents of electricity. 3 machines attacked her. Each punch directed in her way made her faster, cutting them down quickly. Like a blur, she finished the one holding Abraham, and then secondly, Oscar, without even breaking a sweat. Well, looks like we both owe her, Oscar said, looking at the girl hovering over them. Abraham wondered who she was. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have any criticisms or complaints, just leave them down in the comments, and I hope you enjoyed it.